Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm going to be talking about the Israeli-Hamas war. That's how it's being branded in the mainstream media. Uh, some people could just say Israeli conflict. Some people may say Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but it's probably more appropriate to just say the Middle Eastern war, because I think that there's going to be a broader um, involvement. And this is part of the reason why the United States government is moving assets into the region. So let me step back and give you why I say this. So, as you know, there are two main aircraft carriers that headed to the Middle East. One's the aircraft Eisenhower, and then the other one is the aircraft Ford, Gerald Ford. They would provide the air support if the Northern Front becomes too involved. So if attacks were coming from Lebanon, or if attacks were coming from Iran, I think the United States would get involved in terms of air support. I think the Israeli Air Force is well equipped to be able to carpet bomb the Gaza Strip. Most of the munitions are either coming from the sea. The Israeli Navy is shooting rockets into Gaza, and the Air Force can target, using smart bombs, target certain buildings. Now, I'm recording this on, what's today? October 17th. Now, the United States president is going to be arriving in Israel on Wednesday, is what has been broadcasted. The Israeli military is starting to amass in the southern front. So this is the Gaza Strip front. They're also moving some of their tanks, armament, and infantry in the northern front. But majority of the movement of these of the Israeli military, the IDF, is in the southern front. It's more focused on the southern front. With the president coming in and some of the negotiations to try to release foreign hostages, there is more time for Israel to get ready for the ground invasion. The ground invasion is going to be happening. This is not going to, but I think I provide a little unique perspective on this. I think that the United States, one, is going to be making money by selling armaments to Israel. Israel needs the armaments because they're going to start to deplete their munitions. And for Israel to truly root out Hamas, they need to go building by building in the Gaza Strip and decimate the region. That doesn't bode well for the civilians. But why did the civilians allow Hamas to take root in Gaza? So the Palestinians are partially to blame to allowing Hamas to take root. Now, as the president comes in, and Blinken, has already, had discussions in Israel, there is this, we're with you, The United States is saying, we're with you, Israel. You have the right to defend your nation, but behind the scenes, they are trying to tie the hands of Israel and how they're going to fight terrorism from the Gaza Strip and potentially from the northern front with Hezbollah. So you have Hamas in the southern and you have Hezbollah in the northern. This cannot be managed through this liberal idea that oh, they just threw rockets, knock out some of the rocket bases and go back to to no armed conflict. This is bigger. This is different. And so the United States, if it's going to continue on the path of trying to tie the Israeli hands behind their back as they are trying to root out Hamas, the terror will spread around the world. And it's not, you can't look at this from a logical point of view. This is a biblical, metaphysical thing that's going on. So if you try to logically manage this, socially manage this, and try to have a soft landing, that's not going to happen with this. There are moments in time where if you do not kill the enemy, absolutely, then worse things will happen. And this has been known in contemporary history, and this has been known in biblical history for a long, long time. So I think that the United States helping Israel in terms of rearmament and providing air support if Iran starts getting involved in the northern front, I think is wise. What is not wise is putting constraints on Israel. Now, Netanyahu, if he wins this in a few months, this ground assault is probably not going to be days. It's going to be measured in months. And normalization in Gaza is going to be measured in years, not in months. So when they go in, this thing is going to be brewing for about 2 years or more. The faster they take out the terrorists in the northern and the southern front, the faster normalization will take place. At best, 2 years. It's possible that this thing won't go normalized until 20 years, depending on how far Israel goes. If Israel goes all the way and roots it all out, then the normalization will take place quicker. I have the standpoint that the Israeli borders, biblical borders, have to be reestablished because of the Temple Mount to be rebuilt. I do not come from the perspective that the Palestinians have the birthright to Israel proper. Now, it is possible that the Palestinians end up being amalgamated into the state of Israel, during the temple times, and live in peace with the Jewish people because the Arabs will get a blessing from the Temple Mount. But I think that the way things are going to go, there's going to be strife, and that a total expulsion is going to be in order. That means expulsion out of the West Bank, and that means also in Gaza. It's probably also taking the Sinai, the Sinai Peninsula back. There's these borders that Israel, it's the borders of Israel biblically and what was promised is not what Israel is right now. It's much, what's biblically is much larger in relative terms. I mean, in compared to the Islamic world, you know, the Islamic world, their territory is much larger than the original borders of Israel. So Israel still will be a small country within a a larger region. But that's coming from a biblical perspective. It's it's biased, but I don't believe in the context that we're with Israel that you can use a Westphalian construct. This idea that you had solidified borders and that if someone breaks that 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 constituted border, then there is some sort of international outcry. There is only one nation, on earth that, has been destined to build another temple, and that is Israel. I mean, this is a biblical issue. This is not. We're not talking about you know border disputes in Ukraine, right? And Crimea and all this. That's different. This is at a much higher level. This is a much deeper level. So Biden comes in and allows for the Israelis to get more prepared for the ground invasion. And then the news will make Biden look like kind of like some sort of hostage negotiator, right? And try to spin it as though he's really he's got the energy to do all this. I don't think he has the energy to get out of bed. But the thing is that they're going to spin it that he's trying to be a peacemaker. So he's appeasing to the liberal crowd that is pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas. They're not pro-Israel. There is a time frame on Netanyahu. So let me go back to what I was thinking about Netanyahu. No matter if Netanyahu wins this war or loses this war, his days as governance are probably over. Because even with the win from the Yom Kippur War, the controlling party was kicked out months later. And because of all the corruption and all the strife that's going on, Netanyahu is probably on his the last, at the very end of the rope, right? The very end of the rope on his political career. Assuming that the one data point that we have with the Yom Kippur War and how the Israeli government changed happens again with this. I sense that the Israeli people, and that's the liberals and the Orthodox, would, let me put it this way, would win if they went all the way. I think that the United States is waving dollars and monetary support, military support to try to prevent Israel to truly rooting out Hamas. To truly root out Hamas, it would be the complete leveling of Gaza. Gaza, for the United States to understand the context of it, Gaza is the size of a few boroughs, like 3 boroughs within New York. So imagine the size of Manhattan, plus the size of Brooklyn, plus the size of the Bronx. That's roughly the size of Gaza. anyone that has lived in New York or even visited New York could realize that a military like Israel could level all of it, all of it in 10 days or less using conventional means. All of it. Every single building could be leveled in 10 days. Unconventional means could be leveled in seconds. But there would be radiation fallout if they did that. So they're not going to do that. They may use unconventional means in Iran, especially if you look at the trade winds, that the trade winds, if Iran used nuclear weapons, most likely the trade winds, Iran would get nuclear fallout. So would Saudi Arabia and Jordan. But if Israel hit Iran, the nuclear fallout would be far less on Israel. So there's a tactical advantage for nuclear weapons against launching onto Iran than Iran using. So, thinking about trade winds, and this is something that Chris Hunter and I looked at about the trade winds if tactical nukes were used in the European theater with Ukraine and Russia. So a European nukes being used by Russia would only hurt Moscow. There's actually a tactical advantage of the Europeans attacking Russia in terms of nuclear fallout. But there are these moments in time within the trade winds and the weather where it does kind of come back and there are a few days out of the month where it comes back and kind of rolls back onto the European states, but those are few. If you target it right, if you time it right, you minimize the fallout in the European theater. So, about 90 days out of the month, the Europeans are there's more advantage for tactical nuke use by the Europeans onto the Russians in only 10% of the month where it's advantageous to use tactical nukes by the Russians in terms of fallout. Who would get the most fallout? Something similar would happen with the Iranians. So, this context that we hear about unconventional warfare in terms of nukes is just the blast and the radiation, but there are the trade winds. There are these winds that happen and they move around and they are a heavy determinant on how much nuclear fallout that would be, in collateral damage in terms of radiation. So Biden comes in and he's slowing down the Israelis' advancement, but at the same time, it's allowing them to amass troops in the southern front and the northern front. I don't think that Iran would be so bold to attack Israel while the president of the United States is in Israel. They might, but I doubt it. The striker force, the strike group that arrived, will obviously provide air support for, as the president is going into Israel and when he is in Israel, there's going to be support. So the chances of something happening when Biden is there, I think is low. And if there was any any hint that something was going to happen, I think the United States would hit. Now, if that does happen, that may bring in the United States, into a more aggressive posture in the Middle East and be more aligned with Israel. So the U.S. Liberty may, that whole thing with the U.S. Liberty back in the day, I think it was in the 60s. I think the U.S. Liberty was with Lyndon Johnson. So it must have been like 63, 64. People that are older that lived during that period of time could probably put it in the chat box and when that happened. I think it was around 63 or 64. Probably 64. I think it was the year after. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I thought it was the year after Kennedy was assassinated. But I may be mixing the Liberty with the Gulf of Tonkin, which was more Vietnam related. But I'm pretty sure the Liberty was tied with Johnson. I don't think it was tied with Nixon. But I don't think, it's possible that kind of incident would happen, but it wouldn't be the death of the president, but it would be attack of a country while the president was there that may kind of be spun in the media as, an attack, of our president or of the United States. So beware of that. But I think that's low probability. But what's more concerning is that you have the liberals out there that are pushing for some sort of peace agreement. Well, Hamas hasn't been fully rooted out, and so if you abort the operation here, the military operation, then Hamas will reconstitute and it'll only get worse. I view this situation with the Palestinians and with Hamas as like a cancer. And if you just let the cancer keep on growing, it's going to have more chance of metastasizing. Now, these organizations like Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran proper have already stated that this is not going to be just regional. This is going to be more, worldwide jihad. Now, some of the policymakers and terrorist experts are saying that there is a concern that there's going to be terrorist activity that's going to be happening in Europe. A lot of immigrants that went to Europe over the last several months and the last couple of years are coming from Islamic countries. They do not want to assimilate into their new country, and there is this groundswell of hate of the country that they're in, and it's starting to show its head with their support with Hamas and their protests against of Israel. So the UK is seeing this problem. The Germans are seeing this problem. The Swedes are seeing this problem. I think also in Denmark. So and it's there's a high potential. I mean, we already have some concerns of certain types of people that have come across the border that we're watching. Our land is porous. Do we have sleeper cells? So it could activate this worldwide terror activation. That's very possible. That's very, very possible. Now, a good sign here is that in terms of the hostages, that there were about 199 uh, supposedly hostages. Many of them, I don't know how many, but many of them, not the majority, but many of them were foreign nationals. So some Germans, some Americans, some French, some British, right? So it seems as though Hamas wants to release those hostages under the condition that there is a safe, some sort of safe passage for exchange, for them to release these hostages. That might be a big, that may be in the works behind the scenes with Blinken and and the president coming in. I wouldn't be surprised that can you imagine what a sort of um, poll boost Biden would get if he had American hostages released when he's there, and they get on Air Force One or Air Force Two or whatever, and and or get transferred to the aircraft carriers, through helicopter, and are released while he's there. That would be a big, that would be a big voter boost or poll boost, I should say, for Biden. Say maybe maybe that's in the works. Again, that's lower probability, probably higher probability of that than the tactical nukes that that would go off in the region. But it's lower probability. Maybe tactical nukes I still think is around 10%, and probability of Biden being able to get the hostages out while he's there is probably only about 15%, maybe 20% chance. But there would probably be a big boost to Biden, um, the ones that are centrist and the ones that are leftists in the United States. But the reality is that Hamas has to be rooted out. Now I was listening to this rant. Now again, this is bias, and I would. There's two things I want to bring up. Mary. One is with John Hogue, and then the other is with this rabbi that I was listening to last night. Um, the rabbi that I was listening to last night, there is there is some Bible code that forewarns us of the events that are taking place, but it's also forewarning us not to do it half-heartedly. And I would have to dive in to the details of like which passage links to which one. It's all using gematria, and basically a word, a phrase in the Torah has a certain numerical value, so a certain verse, and taking that same numerical value and using a computer and looking at the texts that have a verse that has the same numerical value and see if there's a link. So there is a link. There's 6 of them actually that he brought up. I would have to go back and like take notes and dive into it a little bit deeper, because it's not something that's on the top of my mind, right? So I would have, for me to, and maybe I'll do a video on that, and maybe people would be interested. The point is that from a biblical standpoint, again, this is bias, but from a biblical standpoint, there's a warning: do not do this half-heartedly. And my concern with the United States government, my concern with the liberals, my concern with mainstream media is that Israel will do it half-heartedly. They'll be pushed into doing it half-heartedly, and Hamas is not going to be fully rooted out. And this is going to escalate to something even larger. Now, you either do it you either front load this or you rear load this, right? the bottom line is that the temple's going to be rebuilt, and it's less pain for everybody if you do the job right the first time. Well, Israel didn't do the job right the first time. They didn't do it right the second time, the third time, the fourth time, the 10th time, 20th time, the 100th time. All right. And it's getting worse every time there is another iteration. So it's time to do it the proper way. Now, I think what's happening because of the whole alignment of, certain things during the holidays that I've already explained, that the countries that support Israel will not be as, let me rephrase this. All peoples of the world are at fault. All peoples of the world are going to feel retribution. The degree of the retribution is going to be different for different people at the societal level and at the personal level, depending on what kind of person you are. Everyone is going to feel pain, a curse, something bad that happens to them. But there's also going to be a certain level of blessing afterwards. And depending on the amount, what type of person you are, depends on the severity of the punishment, the degree of the punishment, and the degree of the blessing. Okay, so obviously someone that is somewhat, a nice person, will see a lesser punishment. Everyone's going to be punished, but a lesser punishment, but more of a blessing. While you take the other side of the spectrum, people that were very, barbaric will get a severe punishment and very little blessing. Right. And the ones that are in the middle, they'll get a curse and a blessing, and it kind of evens out. But you get this idea that there's a spectrum, but everyone's going to be somewhat affected by this because of their certain actions and certain inactions. And at a societal level, at countries have personalities. Countries have certain attributes that give them strength and give them weakness. In the business world, we would say a SWOT analysis, right? But there are these attributes, okay? And biblically, there are 70 nations. Now, there are subsets of these nations that are spin-offs that make up all the nations of the world. We have more than 70 nations, but 70 main nations, and there are subsets of those nations to add up to all the nations of the world. I don't know how many nations that we have, countries that we have. I don't know, maybe 200, 187. I don't know what the number is. More than 70, but there are 70 main ones, and then they branch off. Right? 35 of them are from Esau, and 35 of them are from Ishmael. These are the 70 nations of the world that are not affiliated with Israel. Okay. Now, what is interesting is that the composition of how much you have of Ishmael or how much you have of Esau is different for each nation. Okay. So it gets a little complicated. So you have Esau, and you have the 35 nations. You have Ishmael, the other 35 nations. And there is an attribute that is unique to Ishmael, and there is an attribute that's unique to Esau. And then there is also the individual. There is a component for the ones that are there is like an internal Esau, and there's an internal Ishmael. Now, Ishmael's attribute in its purest form is religious um, vigor, um, religious absolutism. And in Esau, I can't remember his attribute. His attribute is more hedonistic. So you have so you can see that individuals may have, let's say, 30% hedonistic and 70%, this religious ferocity or very little religious ferocity, and and much more hedonistic. Probably in America, a big part of the population falls more in hedonism than, and so we have attributes of Esau. All right. So there are individuals that have these different percentage, but there are at the countrywide level, there are these different percentages. So you kind of have to keep that in mind while we're, going through these tumultuous times. And, we are so used to pushing out religion or pushing out, quote, God or a higher power in our lives. And there is this, there's this liberal mentality that you can socially design the the environment in such a way where you can have peace and all that. And it's perhaps the peace is because of a blessing, because of the innate attributes of the nation or the innate attributes of the person. Now, of course, someone may have poor attributes or poor composition of these attributes, and they can improve themselves, and there is this kind of like ability to kind of self-correct. But we're dealing with nations. The point I'm making is we're dealing with nations that around that area, they're either very hedonistic or they're very there's a very strong religious vigor to them, and it's a dangerous composition. And the longer that we don't root out this terror, this cancer, the worse it's going to get. Now it gets more complicated. We're not in a bubble, and there's no one. Again, like I said, everyone is at fault here in some shape or form. But if we sometimes fund this. We created Bin Laden, right, during the Afghan War with Afghan and Russia, right? We created Saddam Hussein. He was an ally because we were against the Iranians. We overthrew the Iranian government in the 50s. We did these things. I think it was the 50s. We did these things because of our unique special interest in the region, right? CIA involvement. This is why I'm against the CIA. They cause more harm than good. And they run rogue. They're not accountable. So, we help fund the Palestinians. We help fund the Israelis. So we've helped fund this conflict. We have funded Iran. So we are complicit in this kind of environment too. through the funding mechanism, but we're also complicit because we don't allow Israel to fully engage and root out the evil. So I think that if we continue on this road of trying to socially engineer this, um, and not allow Israel to do what they need to do to root out terror, um, and to root out terror, then I think we're going to be receiving a little bit more of the punishment than what was originally thought that we would get. I find it funny to see these Americans that think that they can be isolationists in this case. Not every, I again, I don't think that America should be having never-ending wars, but there are certain things that you need to engage in, and there are certain things you can't. And then absolute, um, you know, uh, isolationist policy is not going to work in this case. But it's funny to see this. I saw this one guy talking and he was going, he's for his family, he's for God, and he's for his community and his country. And he doesn't care about what's going on in the Middle East. And what happens when the metastasis happens? What happens when you actually see it, in your community or your, your family and your religion, whatever, probably evangelical this person was. But I don't know, but it most likely evangelical. Um, you don't know and how that kind of isolationist policy may lead to actually the watering down of your religion or the watering down of your society. How this kind of an isolationist probably is not a liberal, right? He didn't have kind of the liberal mindset. He was more of a very conservative isolationist Yahoo flyover country kind of guy, right? um they don't realize that we're not in a bubble, and that these things happen and they can actually water down the community that how he views his community, water down his religion as he sees it, or destroy the family unit as he sees it. These things can happen, and I just think that the world in general has shifted from a liberal policy way too far, and that pendulum needs to swing back to conservatism. That's conservatism in terms of financial prudence, at the government level, financial prudence at the personal level. We consume way too much. I think we are way too egocentric as a society. Um, and there is quote, to quote a phrase, even though it doesn't mean this, but to quote a phrase from REM, we're losing our religion, right? There are benefits. We have lost a spiritual side. Human beings are spiritual. They need a spiritual component in their life. People that don't have a spiritual component usually feel lost, usually go down a path of destruction, either biologically, or at or they destroy their society. But we need to get a little bit of that spirituality back. Not everybody needs to be a fanatic. I mean, that's not a good thing. But having an egocentric hedonistic society is not a good thing either. So there's this thing, this conflict is much bigger than other conflicts. And like I said to John, now I'm going back to to John. hopefully I'll do that video where I do that whole Bible quote thing, right? I'd have to research it a little bit because the guy was at a very high level of Torah knowledge, and I'd have to kind of go a little slow and digest it a little bit. With John, I don't totally agree with John Hogue 100% on his take on Israel. But what I wanted to do was, I like listening to John. I learn from John. I think other people learn from John Hogue also, and that he has a unique perspective. He has a pretty strong historical knowledge about the world and of U.S. events. He's relatively accurate on how he sees things, and he's funny. I like talking to him, but we don't agree 100% on Israel. We don't need to agree 100% on Israel. He's more on the Palestinians, side of this than the Israeli side. I'm more on the Temple Mount idea. My perspective is more, we are moving into an age of a we're at these milestones for a messianic era. Now, we have 216 years to go for this, 6,000th year. Does the temple get rebuilt? This is the reason why I said 230 in other videos. Does the messianic era start in 216, or does it start to evolve pre 216? And the Temple Mount is actually built on 216, or is it built like roughly 14, 15 years later? That's why I said that it's like plus or minus. It's not so clear on what that 6,000 means. Does it mean that the temple is built? Obviously you need time for it to be built. Is it being built? Construction starts on 216. But there are these stepping stones that have to take place. And it may take 216 for the embryo to develop into the fetus that develops into the baby that gets born 216 years from now. But there's also these commentaries from scholars that say that there are two other options, and that other option is that if mankind is so deprived of humanity, of spirituality, that the messianic era is ushered in with a ton of curse, and then that's the cleansing. Or if there are enough people that have observance of Torah, and the societies are not so hedonistic and egotistic, then there is a messianic era that happens that is coming from a more peaceful. So it can be ushered in peacefully through our doing. It could be ushered in violently through our doing, or there's the default of the 6,000th year, which is around 216 years from now. So that's the kind of mindset that I have. Now, some people would say you're a Messianic Jew. And I'm like, no, I'm not a Messianic Jew. What I'm just saying is that it states that there's going to be a new temple that's being built, and that temple means that our understanding of the borders of Israel are going to change. The importance of the Jewish people in the world is going to change. The Jewish people are going to have to be spiritual people, not business people. And the nations of the world, the 70 nations of the world, and their composites, their subsets, will, if they want the blessing, will need to do the peace offerings. I think it's annual to get it, and that so there's going to be a high level of spirituality for 1,000 years. That's what's been written. So now my understanding is then things start to fall apart, and mankind may not be around, but that's left for debate. But we're going into a new era. That's what I'm seeing. And this Westphalian liberal mindset of socially soft landing this, it's just not going to work. It's not going to work. So we'll see. But I'm concerned that if the United States keeps on tying the hands of Israel, then there's going to be more metastasizing of terrorism, not just in that region, but in the world. And the sooner that the Palestinians realize you can govern yourselves without terrorists, it'll be more peaceful. And if you show that you can have a peaceful society, you may be brought in to the state of Israel. But if you continue to be barbaric, if you continue to have this, Ishmael religious ferocity as an attribute, then what's going to happen is that you're going to be expelled from the land, and you are going to have to be amalgamated with the other nations that you're more aligned to with the attributes that you're born with. So that means that some of these people would have to go to Egypt. Some of them would have to go to, the Northern African nations. Some of them would have to go to Turkey. Some of them would have to go to Iran. Some of them would have to go to Jordan. Some of them would have to go to Saudi Arabia or Qatar or, United Emirates or whatever, Yemen, so they would have to, and then things would equalize. So really, the choice is theirs. Do you want to live in peace, or do you want to be expelled physically and spiritually? So that's the context that I have. Now, John Hope doesn't agree with me on that. It's okay. I can still learn something from John Hope. And same thing, people that are for the Palestinians, or view Israel in a more negative light in this context, or in a lot of contexts, could still learn something from me. See, the way we're going to get through this is through understanding, and through the understanding that it's like seeing a patient that needs to go into surgery. All right. They haven't gone into surgery yet, but they need to go into surgery, and they got a big problem. And the only way to fix it is to actually cause damage, cut tissue, remove things. All right. And you explain it to them. They understand it at an intellectual level of what they need to have done. But it doesn't really it doesn't really hit home in their heart until they're actually being prepped for surgery, and they're going through the surgery, and then all the complications after the surgery. Sometimes complications of surgery are benign, some of them kind of get major. This is similar. Intellectually, we can, talk about how we can understand each other, and why we are at the place we're at from a biblical standpoint, or from a geopolitical standpoint, from a military standpoint. But it doesn't hit the heart until you actually do the surgery. And that surgical procedure is the rooting out, the cutting of the terrorism and the hedonism of the world. This is not, I mean, it's emblematic, and it's very raw, and it has a lot of energy in that region. But it's a representation of a larger problem in the world, within ourselves and within the societies we live in. So, we can all learn from each other. but the surgery still has to happen. And I think that in mainstream, it's going to be you're for Israel or you're, against Israel. And as over time, the mainstream media is going to turn more and more because they love carnage. They get eyeballs with carnage. They're going to be more and more for the Palestinians and Hamas and less for Israel. Um, and there's this divine judgment that's taking place. Evil has to be rooted out, but it's not easy. And it would be better if the Palestinians say, "Hey, we don't want Hamas. We need your help, Israel. We'll work together to get Hamas out of here." But that's not what's going on. A big part of their society wants Hamas. That's a reality. Not so easy. But that's the reason why I think it's important that that you have people on your show, or if you have a channel or whatever, that you don't just bring on people that you agree with and you just nod your head or put your 2 cents in, but you also have people you disagree with and give them the floor, the courtesy to talk. You don't have to completely agree, and you don't use the platform to try to belittle them. Some people they'll bring on someone if they disagree, and they start shouting at each other or whatever, instead of being cordial. And that's the ones that do that are egotistic. If they bring them on their show and do something like that, that is a very egotistic kind of thing. For example, um, there's aspects of this, the influenza theory, right? There's no sequence that we know of, but um, you know, having having people on, um, like John Cullen, where I could learn something from him, was important, and that the audience could learn something. And yes, from my clinical experience, I said this is what I saw, and this is what what seems logical from a medical standpoint, um, which may be against with what he's saying, but that's a conversation. It's not to belittle an individual. That's And I think there are too many channels out there that are trying to create this kind of belittling. It's us versus them. And they're like absolutists. Well, these absolutists are coming from the attribute of Ishmael, even though they're not Muslim. They're coming from an attribute of Ishmael. This kind of religious vigor, this absolutism, that if you don't follow the edicts that I think you should follow, if you don't talk about the things that I think you should focus on, then therefore you must be evil. Attribute of Ishmael. So, and of course it's not absolute. There's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, in the attributes of that individual. I'm talking in generic terms. But the reality of the situation is that we need to learn from the other side and not yell. The problem what we saw with Alan Dershowitz and Cornel West with Hannity was that they yelled at each other through the whole thing. Now, the less intellectual like it and think it's all funny and all, it's just big game. The ones that are more deeper in thinking and more spiritual will see that this is just a shouting match, and this is emblematic of where we are in society, where it's just noise, and that there's very little really good content that's being spoken that you can learn from, which is a shame, because you have two very learned individuals that have a contribution to discuss, at the table, but all it is just one gigantic yelling match. And that is what's happening on social media. It's these camps, us versus them. We can't talk to someone that 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 has a different point of view. And it's you see this especially in the Palestinian and Israeli conflict. You know, I respect John Hogue, and I like listening to him. I think he's funny, and I just like his personality. He's a warm person. Deep down inside, he's a very warm soul, good soul. Um, um, but I don't totally agree with his stance on Israel. I don't need to, and I can learn from it. That's the thing. I think the big point in this part of the video to take is that you can learn from people that you disagree with. You can learn from that because there are things in there that their perspective that is rational and you can learn from and you can bring it into your thinking. But this is not some sort of conversion. you know Try to convert. If you listen to like really ultra liberals, they're always trying to convert you, right? There are like people that want to convert you so you do their kind of job because they think what they do as a career is the most important, or their religion is the most important. Therefore, you should convert to their religion, or you should convert to their style, their mentality of hobbies or whatever. No, you don't have to, but you can still learn from them. But there are people that that are they feel as though to justify their being, instead of using logic, it's about conversion. And if they're not getting conversion within in their discipline or whatever, enough people siding with them, enough people that they're creating, then they start to become a little bit more belligerent, a little bit more violent, a little bit more dangerous. You know, and you have these different grades that it can happen. So, getting back to the whole Israel conflict here, this conflict, this Palestinian Israeli conflict, is a conflict within us, a conflict within society proper. It's manifesting itself in the war that's happening right now, with the conflict in Gaza. But it is happening in us. And this is another element of we are all at fault. We're all at fault to allow this to be happening in the world. It shouldn't be. We're all at fault that we allowed, governments to make things they shouldn't be making. At a therapeutic level and at an organism level. But we still allow them to have it. We shouldn't allow for agencies like the three-letter agencies in the United States to run rogue, but we let them. We shouldn't allow for crooked politicians to do the things that they're doing, but we let them. So as the society, it has, we see these people that are even at an urban level. You see these kind of degenerates that are running around and can't pull up their pants, right? And acting disrespectful and not holding doors for the elderly or or women or whatever, or just poor manners. We let them do it instead of telling them that the appropriate social response is to take care of the elderly. Not don't look like a hula. Pull up your pants. No one wants to know what kind of underwear you have. Just like, but this is a problem. And once they can get away with it, they jump the turnstiles, and then all of a sudden they think they can steal, out of these apparel companies, or at CVS or Walgreens or whatever. And eventually, there's a lockdown in the society. There's less freedom. There's less. There's more fear and all this because we um, didn't, as a societal level, say that these behaviors, no matter how benign they may seem on the surface, metastasize. Pulling up your pants, is a big step. Make your bed is a big step for these people. And when they don't, eventually they slide into disrespecting people, and eventually disrespecting property, and then eventually, going to the point of murdering or stealing. And this is this is the hedonistic side, the Esau side of things, and the attribute. So you can see this at the countrywide level for certain countries, and you can see it in individuals. They have a certain composition, certain attribute. And so rooting out Hamas and the terror and the collateral damage and all this that's happening is also this cleansing within us that's happening. There's a spiritual thing that's going on. Probably priests and Buddhists and rabbis and imams and all that could probably articulate it way better than I can. But I just there is this physical war that we see on BBC or CNN, but there's also an internal war that's happening in all of us, and we're all at fault. And we all can, we could all, in theory, ask for forgiveness from God, and if we all did it on the same time, and we meant it, this world would be a lot more peaceful. It'll never happen because we have religious fervor, we have hedonistic tendencies, and therefore we lose the opportunity each and every day. So that's my take on what's going on. I think that Biden's trip may move the ball forward for the hostage change. Hamas is probably scrambling to dig in. They use it as an opportunity to buy some time. And Israelis are starting to amass troops. And I think that once Israel says they're going in, which will be shortly after Biden leaves, I doubt them going in while he's there. But shortly after he leaves, it's going to be all hell is going to break loose in Gaza. There's going to be a lot of carnage. If you really want to root out Hamas and absolutely destroy their infrastructure, their ability to raise terror, their governance, their leadership, everything, totally destroy it, Gaza has to be destroyed too. Because what happens is you have an undifferentiated tumor in the tissue of Gaza. And when it's undifferentiated and it's amalgamated and it's diffused in that tissue, you gotta cut it all out. You can't target it. So it's gonna be bloody, and it's gonna cause havoc in certain markets, especially the oil market, and we'll see how it goes. But I think that isolationist policy, like a typical American isolationist policy, is not prudent when you're talking about the spiritual war that's happening in the Holy Land, and also the spiritual war that's happening within all of us. So that's my take on the October 17th news for Israel. Please subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 YouTube channels. The links are in the description of this video and all my videos. Also, please subscribe to Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. My channels have a lot of the content that could not be kept up on YouTube there. So please subscribe to all 6 channels. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. So please subscribe. In addition, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the health products that I offer. I am a big proponent of supplementation, proper diet, proper exercise, proper sleep, proper mental exercising, meaning challenge your brain, do reading, writing, right? And you will age slower, right? It's when you don't do these things, your body starts to atrophy and you start to wither away, and your constitution isn't up to par where it should be. So, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get products, healthcare products like Silver Gel. This product here I use every day, and you can use it as a skincare product where you put it on your body, you leave it on overnight, and you'll start to clear your skin. In addition, this also helps with burns and scrapes and cuts. It'll help to speed up the healing, right? Because it's keeping the wound clean. And what is interesting about this product is that it also neutralizes pathogens. And when it's neutralizing pathogens, it creates a protective. You can use it as creating a protective barrier. So you put it on your hands, and it'll stay on your hands and stay active for about 5 hours, 6 hours. And you put it around your mouth and around your nose and inside your nostrils, lightly coated in your nostrils and around your ears, right? And this is a way to neutralize pathogens and reduce chances of getting colds and stuff like this, and and other things that have been out there. So you do that as kind of like a protocol to protect you during the cold season, right? Or during some sort of issue out there. But you can use this also as a skincare product. It's a great product, or skin healing product. I also have a toothpaste. It's a structural nano silver toothpaste. It has no fluoride in it, and this will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, neutralize pathogens, reduce the plaque, and reduce that gum inflammation, that gingivitis and that gum inflammation that people have. When you reduce plaque and reduce that gingivitis, you're reducing the chances of cardiovascular disease due to oral hygiene. So when you do that, you are you're making your body better, right? But when you are using products like this, right, you're neutralizing pathogens in your oral cavity, right? You're reducing the chances of getting sick. So, this is a great toothpaste, way better than Alex Jones's toothpaste. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get a few tubes of toothpaste. I also carry a multivitamin. This is a great multivitamin. You couple this with the rest of the protocol, which is liquid nano silver. I take a tablespoon of that every day. I also take turmeric and ashwagandha that brings down the inflammatory response and the blood glucose levels, control the blood glucose levels, and then C60, which is a very strong antioxidant to bring down the reactive oxygen species to improve your mitochondrial health and the health of the cell. And so you have more energy because your mitochondria creates the ATP. So, take this multivitamin with the protocol. In addition, I have a product, lignans, that's a powder. It's a flax all powder. And this will help with boosting up your immune system and also help with your hormonal health. Because it's in a powder form, I put the powder into my hummus. I have homemade hummus, and I put the powder in the homemade hummus right before I eat it, right? Not when I'm preparing the hummus, but um, but I'm just about ready to eat it. I put a scoop of it. There's a little scooper in the container, and I put that into the hummus. And I also put my probiotic, which is also a powder form, and put that in the hummus. Mix it, and then just eat it. Right. So that's how I take it in the afternoon every day. So add that to your protocol, and that will improve your immune system and improve your hormonal health. Now, when you couple it with the probiotic, you're providing your gut biome with that proper reset, right? The right ability for the body to digest and metabolize, right? So a lot of people they don't take probiotics, unfortunately, and gut health is really important. And good gut health not only helps you di- in terms of digestion and absorbing nutrients, but it also improves your mental health. There's a correlation between your gut health and your mental health. So, you know, probiotics are really important. So, those are some of the products that I offer on the store. I also have all natural deodorants in citrus and peppermint made from Himalayan essential oils. It's a great product, very high quality, no aluminum in it, and other supplements, like B complex, clarity factor, which helps with you focusing on tasks, and it gets those neurons firing, and the vitamin C's, the zincs, the magnesium, the collagen. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. That's the-studio-reykjavik.com. And you will be able to just have access to really, really high quality products. If you follow my protocol, then you're going to start seeing that your body is starting to improve its immune system. It's going to be aging slower. You're going to have better cellular health. And there's a compound effect that takes place, and you're going to just have more energy and more vitality. When something does happen, you have a better way to fight it, right? You're giving your body that extra nutrients to have. Unfortunately, we have in the United States a healthcare system that is not a healthcare system, it's a disease care system. We treat diseases, and we don't spend enough time in preventative measures in the society. And the preventative measures is proper diet, proper exercise, proper hydration, no fluorinated water, proper hydration, make sure it's filtered, proper supplementation, proper sleep, right? Proper activity, mental activity, you know, read more. And I'm not talking about reading on the internet, because the internet reading is really dumbed down now. Years ago, it wasn't, but now everything is, pictorial or video, and the actual text content is going down in terms of number of word count. But even also the vocabulary is going down. Start reading books. Start learning subjects that you've never learned before. Go to the library and just pick up a book on a subject that you're interested in but don't know a lot about. And you're going to be challenging your brain. And and don't spend so much time on, the the negativity on the internet, right? Because that is weakening your immune system, and that is bringing taking away precious energy that you need to 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 live, right? It's almost it's almost parasitic. Our modern day of life is parasitic to our energy. It's sucking the energy away from us, right? It's taking our energy. So, challenge your brain, right? Just as much as you have to do a little bit of resistance training, a little bit of cardio, right? And you're gonna fare better. You're gonna fare better. You're gonna notice that you're gonna have that vitality. Don't just sit and just, and do nothing. But take my advice, follow the protocol, go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. That's the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. And try out the products that I offer. You'd be amazed and you'll be very happy that you did. And if you follow it on a regular basis, you're going to have that compounding effect of the protocol. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Please subscribe to my Patreon account. The description is in this video and all my videos. For a nominal fee, you can subscribe and help support my news coverage. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting me. And make sure, you can take charge of your health by preventative measures. And preventative measures means proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation, proper sleep, and proper mental challenging. Read more, write, talk to people. Don't go in and get into an argument like Alan Dershowitz and Cornel West. But, just challenge yourself, because most people, they don't learn things that they've never learned before. And when you do, you're actually configuring your brain differently. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.